Welcome, Ayubowan. So in this lesson, we're going to cover Book 8, Cambridge Book 8, Test 2, Reading for Academic Students. So I'd like you to take 1 hour. Please set your clock, right? And put the timer for 1 hour and finish all 40 questions. When the time is up and you have finished, then you can start watching the video and you can mark the answers. So pause the video from here for 1 hour and off you go, do test 2. This is exclusively for academic students only. Alright, so I hope you would have done the test by now. So let's have a look at the answers. Test 2 in Book 8, and for questions number 1 to 13, these are the answers. Remember, the answers in brackets are optional, right? They are not compulsory. Next one, passage 2, questions 14 to 26. Right. And then we have passage 3, questions 27 to 40. Okay. Right. So I hope you have marked everything, right? 1 to 13, 14 to 26, and then finally 27 to 40. You can put your score out of 40 and then go and put your band score. Also, you know how to calculate it because I've shown it to you in lesson 1 in the reading pillar, right? So 0 to 11, highly unlikely you're going to get an acceptable score. 12 to 20, probably okay, you might get an acceptable score. 29 to 40, it's highly likely that you will probably get a good score. So, passage 1. Sheet glass manufacturer, the float process. Okay. Complete the table and diagram below. So, first one is spinning. The question requires a method of producing flat glass. There are 2 methods of making flat glass. Now, before you have a look at this video in detail, I'd like you to open the question paper on one side of your screen. Hopefully, you've downloaded it obviously before you do it. Or if you have a printed version, that's fine. Keep it in front of you, right? And if you have the soft copy, one side you have your paper, on the other side minimize and you can have my video, right? Because I'm not showing you the paper here, you need to have the paper with you. If not, you will not be able to understand this, right? And please just don't go through this video without doing the paper, okay? I gave you time at the start 1 hour to do it because you have to do it, then it's good for you to have a look at the answers. If you have not done it, then please stop the video from here, go and do it and come and watch the video. Don't just watch it without answering because you'll not understand any of this what is here, right? So, the question requires a method of producing flat glass and there are 2 methods of making flat glass. So, in the first para, the first successful method of making clear flat glass involved spinning. In the second para, the first continuous ribbon process involved squeezing molten glass through 2 hot rollers similar to an old mangle. So the first method is spinning and the second method is the ribbon process, which is already mentioned in the table. Okay. Number 2, the answer is unblemished. So in para 1, it states, this method, which is obviously spinning, was very effective as the glass had not touched any surfaces between being soft and becoming hard. So it stayed perfectly unblemished, right? So the writer mentions the advantage of spinning is that it keeps or it makes the glass remain perfectly unblemished. So you can write perfectly unblemished or just unblemished is also okay. So question number 3, labor, you can write it in either way, intensive, right? The 2 disadvantages of spinning methods were mentioned in the last sentence of para 1. However, the process took a long time and was labor intensive. However means something which is negative. As the sentences above indicate the advantages of the spinning process, the transition word or the linking word, however, implies the disadvantage of the method, which was what? Labor intensive, right? So that is your answer. Number 4 answer is thickness. Now, the advantages of the ribbon process were mentioned in para 2. This allowed glass of virtually any thickness to be made non-stop. So 2 advantages is it could produce glass sheets of varying thickness and it was a non-stop process. Okay, so the answer is thickness. Next one is marked, right? So if you go to paragraph 2, all the information about drawbacks, disadvantages of the ribbon method was that, but the rollers would leave both sides of the glass marked, and these would then need to be ground and polished. This part of the process rubbed away around 20% of the glass, and the machines were very expensive, right? So the rollers left both sides of the glass marked so that it was not blemished, it was not unblemished, right? So therefore, the answer would be marked. Okay. So question number 6, answer is molten glass, or you can say glass. Or 7, you can say molten tin or molten tin metal, right? So either you could just say tin or metal, that would be better, okay? So in paragraph 3, right, in 1952, he had the idea of using bed for molten metal, right? Using a bed of molten metal to form the flat glass, eliminating altogether the need for rollers within the float bath, but could not boil at a temperature below the temperature of the molten glass, right? So he used the molten metal as material to form flat glass, because the metal must be melted at a temperature less than the hardening point of glass and could not boil at a temperature below the temperature of molten glass. So it was that, tin was the most suitable metal, and therefore for question number 7, the answer is tin, and here it was molten glass, right? Okay, question number 8, the answer is rollers. Now I'm reminding you again, if you don't have the reading paper in front of you, you would find this really weird. You can't do it without the reading paper in front of you, right? Because you don't know the reading passage off your head, so you need to have it in front of you, okay? So in para 3, eliminating altogether the need for rollers within the float bath. This means that the float process did not need the rollers within the float bath. In the picture you can, and it goes on, right? So for me, the answer would be rollers. Okay, eliminating altogether the need for rollers, right? So in the picture you can see that bit, right? Right, okay, so question number 9 to 13. Do the following statements agree with the information given in the reading passage, right? the metal used in the float process had to have specific properties. Okay, so metal, float process, specific properties. Now, if you go to paragraph 3, right, the requirement for the metal is that the metal had to melt at a temperature less than the hardening point of glass, about 600 degrees, but could not boil at a temperature below the temperature of the molten glass, that is about 1500 degrees. The best metal for the job was tin. There were specific requirements, properties for the metal used in the floating process. You had to have certain temperatures. Therefore, I would say yes, it is true. Next one, Pilkington, right, invested some of his own money in his float plant. So, Pilkington, keywords, invested, own money, float plant. If you go to paragraph 5, the writer indicates that Pilkington built a pilot plant in 1953, and by 1955 he had convinced his company to build a full-scale plant. But we don't know who invested. Was it his money or someone else? So the answer would be not given. Question number 11. Pilkington's first full-scale plant was an instant commercial success. Okay, so Pilkington's first full-scale plant, commercial success. Now the same way you go to paragraph 5. However, it took 14 months of non-stop production, costing the company £100,000 a month before the plant produced any usable glass. Furthermore, once they succeeded in making marketable flat glass, the machine was turned off for a service to prepare it for years of continuous production. When it started up again, it took another 4 months to get the process right again. So, Pilkington's first full-scale plant was an instant commercial success. Let's see, right? I think no, right? Because the process was taking so long, I don't think it was an instant success. So, it was a fall. Commercial success means success in making marketable flat glass. So, it wasn't a good start. Question number 12. The process invented by Pilkington has now been improved. Okay, so process invented by Pilkington been improved. Now if you go to paragraph 6, float plants today make glass of near optical quality. It adds up to a continuous melting process. Several processes, melting, refining, homogenizing, were used in this process of delivering glass smoothly and continuously to the float path, right? So you can see that these were the recent improvements in the process invented by Pilkington. So the process invented by Pilkington has now been improved. Yes, it is true, right? Alright, because it obviously says float plants today, so definitely it's now, right? 13. Computers are better than humans at detecting faults in glass, right? So we have computers better than humans detecting faults. So if you go to the last sentence in para 7, it explains that inspection technology allows more than 100 million measurements a second to be made across the ribbon. Locating flaws, the unaided eye would be unable to see, right? So having a look at it, right, where it says computers are better than humans at detecting faults, right? It says that it allows more than 100 million measurements, right? And it locates flaws that we can't see from the eye. So I would say definitely this is true. Okay, so that is your answer. So moving on, passage 2, the Little Ice Age. Questions number 14 to 17. Choose the correct heading for the paragraphs. So let's have a look at paragraph B. In paragraph B it states, the climate events of the Little Ice Age did more than help shape the modern world. They are the deeply important context of the current unprecedented global warming, right? So this means that the Little Ice Age is the background or which relates to the current precedented global warming, right? And the Little Ice Age has had an impact or rather an effect on today's world. So I would say the relevance of the Little Ice Age today. So it would be question number 2 or rather the second one to match it against. Next one, paragraph D. Okay, so if you go to the first sentence in para D, this book is a narrative history of climate shifts during the past 10 centuries. This paragraph refers to information about a book. A study which considers evidence during the last 10 centuries means 1,000 years, right? So it's a study covering 1,000 years. 10 centuries is obviously centuries 100, okay? So 10 into 100 is obviously 8,000 years, right? So it would be 7. Okay, a study covering 1,000 years. 16, paragraph E. So in the last sentence of para E, it states that the increased productivity from farmland made some countries self-sufficient in grain and livestock, right? And offered effective protection against famine. So this means that thanks to the productivity of the farmland, some countries have enough food, right? So I would say the answer is 9. Question number 17, which is paragraph F, right? A vast migration from Europe by land-hungry farmers and others resulted in the spread of European intensive farming methods to other countries, right? This caused an unprecedented land clearance, releasing vast quantities of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, triggering for the first time humanly caused global warming, okay? So it was rather a human impact on the climate because that was the first time it triggered humanly caused global warming, okay? So the answer would be 9. 1 minute, but this one was 9. I think this one is not 9. It should be actually 4, guys, right? Sorry about that. It should be 4. Okay, answer should be 4. You've already got the answers right at the start, okay, so don't worry. Questions number 18 to 22. Complete the summary using the list of words A to I below, right? So 18, 19, ice cores and tree rings. It could be in any order. These are the 2 answers, right? So if you go to para C, the writer explains that systematic weather observations only began a few centuries ago, even more recently in India and tropical Africa. So before records began, we have only proxy records, right? Reconstructed largely from tree rings and ice cores, right? So it could be in any order, tree rings, ice cores, or ice cores and tree rings. Right, next one, right, 20. So climate shifts, right? Now that is the answer. So if you go to paragraph B, you can see the Little Ice Age was far from a deep freeze. However, rather an irregular seesaw of rapid climate shifts. So what does this mean? That the Little Ice Age was not a time of only freezing temperatures, but it was also having rapid changes in the climate, right? So I would say climate shifts. It's there, rapid climate shifts. Right, 21 answer is storms. So if you go to para B, the seesaw brought cycles of intensely cold winters, easterly winds, right, and then switched abruptly to years of heavy spring and early summer rains, mild winters, and frequent Atlantic storms. So the answer should be storms, right? Question number 22. Heat waves is the answer. If you go to para B, the writer refers periods of droughts, light northeasterly winds and summer heat waves. So this seesaw of changes in climate also brought heat waves, right? Periods of very high temperatures and drought. So the answer should be heat waves. 23 to 26, you have to classify the events, right? Many Europeans started farming abroad. So, Europeans farming abroad. Now, if you read through para F, the writer explains that in the beginning of the modern warm period, there were many European land-hungry farmers and other migrating to other countries like North America, Australia and New Zealand to farm. So what does this mean? That this means that they moved to other countries to start farming and they started farming abroad, right? So many Europeans started farming abroad, modern warm periods. So I think yes, it would be, the answer would be C. 24. The cutting down of trees began to affect the climate. So keywords are cutting down trees, affect climate. If you go to para F, also the modern warm period, millions of hectares of forest and woodland before the newcomers, it was triggering for the first time. So I think yes, it's a modern warm period. Answer is C. Right? Number 25, Europeans discovered other lands, right? And if you go to para D and read through, in the medieval warm period, during these 3 centuries, and it goes on, so I would say answer is A. 26, changes took place in fishing patterns, right? So keywords are changes, fishing patterns. In para E, during the Little Ice Age, dried cod, herring were already staples of the European fish trade. But changes in the water temperature forced fishing fleets to work further offshore, right? So during the Little Ice Age, so I would say the answer is, so with passage 3, the meaning and power of smell, okay? So questions number 27 to 32. Choosing the correct heading for each paragraph. So let's have a look at para E, okay? It became apparent that smell can evoke strong emotional responses. For example, a scent associated with a good experience can bring a rush of joy, while a foul odor, which is smell, okay, or one associated with a bad memory may make us disgusted about it. In the last sentence, the writer confirms that the perception of smell, therefore, consists not only of the sensation of the odors themselves, but of the experiences and emotions associated with them, right? So this means that there is a relationship between smell and the feelings, okay? And therefore, the answer should be 8. the relationship between smell and the feelings, right, or and feelings. So moving on into paragraph B, right, the first sentence in para B tells us, odors are also essential cues in social bonding. One respondent to the survey believed that there is no true emotional bonding without touching and smelling a loved one. That's interesting, right? That means that it is necessary to touch and smell to have like a true emotional bond, and therefore number 2, the role of smell in personal relationships. Okay? Paragraph C. In spite of its importance to our emotional and sensory lives, smell is probably the most undervalued sense in many cultures. The human sense is feeble and underdeveloped. So this means that the importance of human, sense of smell is usually underestimated and it's not appreciated when compared to the others. So number 6, why our sense of smell is not appreciated. Okay? Question number 30 is paragraph D. So in para D, odors, unlike colors for instance, cannot be named in many languages because the specific vocabulary simply does not exist. It smells like we have to say when describing an odor struggling to express our olfactory experience, right? So this means, olfactory means connected with the smell of, sense of smell, right? This means that it is difficult for people to talk about smells because of the lack of specific vocabulary. So I think it's number 1, difficulties of talking about smells, right? Question number 31, which is para E. Now here the writer states, significant advances have been made in understanding of the biological and chemical nature of olfaction. But many fundamental questions have yet to be answered. This means that though there have been many developments in research about olfaction, there are still questions to answer, right? So questions like these mean that interest in the psychology of smell is inevitably set to play an increasingly important role for researchers, right? So therefore, it is like kind of necessary in the future to have further studies into smell. So I think it would be 3 future studies into smell, right? Question number 32, which is para F. The writer makes connections between smells and cultures and says, importantly, our commonly held feelings about smells can help distinguish us from other cultures. This means that smell can be used to define people or culture from others, right? So I think it is a factor to define groups, and that would be number 5. Right. Questions number 33 to 36. Choose the correct letter A, B, C or D, right? Now you have to see which one it is along with the reading passage, right? According to the introduction, we become aware of the importance of smell when what? Okay. So in the introduction paragraph, the writer argues that most of the time we are surrounded by smells, but we are not consciously aware of their importance to us. It is only when the faculty is impaired for some reason that we begin to realize the essential role the sense of smell plays in our sense of well-being, right? So this means that people are only aware or they pay attention to the important essential role of smell when their ability to smell is kind of damaged. So I would say answer is C. Impaired means damaged. Question number 34. The experiment described in paragraph B, so let's have a look at it, right? The experiment conducted in paragraph B is described by the writer as, in one well-known test, women and men were able to distinguish by smell alone clothing worn by their marriage partners, as the experiment revealed even when not consciously considered smells, right? So shows how we make use of the smell without realizing it, okay? Because they were able to kind of identify them by distinguishing the smell, like, you know, the clothing, the perfume smell, all of that, right? 35. What is the writer doing in para C? In paragraph C, the writer explains, though the human sense of the smell is considered to be feeble and underdeveloped, our noses are able to recognize thousands of smells and to perceive odor which present only in extremely small quantities, right? So rejecting is a common belief, but we actually smell thousands of smells, right? So answer is C. So the next question, question number 36. What does the writer suggest about the study of smell in the atmosphere in para E? So in paragraph E, the writer says researchers have still to decide whether smell is one sense or two, one responding to odors proper and the other registering odorless chemicals in the air, right? So smell is yet to be defined because they have to still define it. So the answer would be D, okay? The last few questions, questions number 37 to 40. Complete the sentences below. Tests have shown that odors can help people recognize the blank belonging to their husbands and wives, okay? So what are your keywords? Tests, odors, recognize, husbands and wives. So if you go to paragraph B, in one well-known test, women and men were able to distinguish by smell alone clothing worn by their marriage partners from similar clothing worn by other people, okay? So what were they able to distinguish? Clothing, right? So answer is clothing. Question number 38. Certain linguistic groups may have difficulty describing smell because they lack the appropriate what, okay? So linguistic groups, difficulty describing smell, lack are the keywords. Now if you go to para D, odors, unlike colors for instance, cannot be named in many languages because the specific vocabulary simply does not exist, right? So the lack of does not exist means lack, right? What do they lack of? Appropriate vocabulary, specific vocabulary, okay? Question number 39. The sense of smell may involve response to blank, which do not smell in addition to obvious odors, right? So keywords are sense of smell, involve and do not smell. So if you go to para E, researchers have still to decide whether the smell is one or two, they respond to odors properly, or they are registering odorless chemicals in the air, okay? So response to chemicals, okay? Answer is chemicals. And the last question, question number 40. Alright, so moving on to the last question, question number 40. Orders regarded as unpleasant in certain blank are not regarded as unpleasant in others. So, unpleasant regarded as not unpleasant in others. So, if you go to para F, so in paragraph F, odors are invested with cultural values, right? Smells that are considered to be offensive in some cultures may be perfectly acceptable in others. So what is it in certain cultures? So unpleasant is offensive, regarded as is considered, not pleasant means acceptable, okay? Sorry, not unpleasant is acceptable. Now with this we have come to the end of discussing the test, okay? So now what is important for you? I think we've discussed, book 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 and now we're in book 8, right? But the most important part, what I feel, is you actually concentrating and doing your practice tests, right? So I can discuss all of this, but if you're not thoroughly observing and watching through, going through when I say to paragraph E, now you can see when I'm doing it itself, I underline, right? So if you are not underlining it and you're just listening to me like looking at that, okay, we're not watching an entertaining movie, we're trying to kind of learn. So underline your keywords if you haven't done it. Okay, if you're doing it online, you could use the online PDF and then make sure you highlight it. If you're doing paper-based, right, make sure you print out the material and you underline it. Practicing it the proper way is important, okay? If not, you will not be able to get a good score even though you watch all of these videos, right, and still sit for the exam. So what is really important is that you understand thoroughly what the questions mean, what is expected by you, right? And then you try to finish all 40 questions within the given time, which is 1 hour. So you time yourself 20, 20, 20 for each section, right? And then every time you do it, get a score. Out of 40, do I have 15, 20, 25, 30, and give yourself the score. Each time you do it, check and see, have I got my desired score? And when I run through the answers, go back, right, and reflect and see, okay, where did I go wrong? Why did I not select para A? Why did I select para B? What are the skimming and scanning words I could have picked up to get this specific paragraph, right? So that is what is really important by yourself, right? And I think you should really focus on that. So with that, we come to the end of the discussion where we were looking at test 2 for Cambridge Book 8.